This is Adobe Illustrator Classroom in a Book, the 2015 release. We are in Chapter 2. This lesson is in your basic photo corrections, which is the primary use of Photoshop for most people. We're going to be learning about image resolution and image size. We're going to straighten and crop an image. If you don't already have Adobe Bridge loaded on your computer, you should get Adobe Bridge downloaded. It is, after all, part of your rental, and by all means, I would want you to use it. We're going to look at taking images that are scanned in that are crooked. We're going to crop them, straighten. You will adjust for tonal range. We'll use the spot healing brush, which is a wonderful thing that you can use to make repairs to areas, as well as the content aware patch tool, which is absolutely marvelous for creating filling for areas that are damaged or that need to be removed. The clone stamp is another tool for touching up areas. And we will also talk about removing digital artifacts and using the Smart Sharpen to finish off retouched photos. For some images, you only have to work on changing the resolution or maybe lightening the image. It might be there's a minor blemish, but for other photos, you really have to do some more advanced filters that result in a better looking image. On page 34, there is a sequence of tasks. These are general steps to follow when you're retouching an image. You may not use all of the steps. It's just a good basic outline. First thing that you would want to do is duplicate the original image or scan. You always want to work in a copy of an image file. It's easier to recover the original later if you need to. Ensuring the resolution is appropriate for the way you'll use an image. You want to make sure that you have a high resolution image. If it's going to be printed, you only need to do something about a 100 or 72 pixels per inch if you are looking at something they're just going to put up on the internet. The other thing would be to crop the image to whatever final size you need it. Remove coloring casts, which can happen either from the lighting or from aging on photographs. You would want to adjust the contrast or the tonal range. Then you'd want to repair flaws in damaged photographs, like in the example that we're going to be using. You would want to delete that what looks like a crease. You would adjust the color and the tone in specific areas to bring out your highlights, your midtones, your shadows, and then sharpen the overall focus of the image. Sometimes you might do these out of order, but you always should start by duplicating the image and adjusting the resolution. Do those first, and then sharpening should be the very last thing that you do. On the top of page 35, resolution and image size. That is really the first step in retouching a photograph, is making sure the image has the appropriate resolution. Resolution refers to the number of pixels that are in an image, establishes the detail. It's also determined by what's called pixel dimensions, the number of pixels across the width and the height of an image. In computer graphics, there are two types of resolution. There is the image resolution, which is the number of pixels measured per inch, PPI. An image that's a high resolution has more pixels. That makes it a larger file size. Photoshop, you can have high resolution to low resolution. 300 PPI or higher, that's pixels per inch, is a high resolution. A low resolution is generally 72 or 96. The number of pixels per unit of length on the monitor is the monitor resolution, which is usually measured in also pixels per inch. Image pixels are translated directly onto monitor pixels. In Photoshop, if the image resolution is higher than the monitor resolution, the image is going to appear on screen larger than its specified print dimensions. If you display a 1 by 1 inch square at 144 ppi on a 72 ppi monitor, that is twice the 72, so you're going to have a 2 by 2 inch area on the screen. That's something you need to think about when you're putting pictures up for posting, for viewing anything that you put up, like on Instagram, Facebook, or any other, social network images. You don't need to put up a super high resolution. It's going to be much larger than it needs to be for the screen. Keep in mind, the higher the resolution, the larger the file, the longer that file is going to take to print or to download from the web. The number of ink dots per inch, which is DPI, that's put on either to a plate for printing or off a laser printer or out of your inkjet, is the output resolution. And higher resolution images output to a higher resolution printer produce the best quality. The appropriate resolution for a printed image is going to be determined both by the printer resolution and by the screen frequency, or lines per inch, of what's called a halftone screen that's used to reproduce images. If you are never going to print anything, send to a high quality, high-end print shop, you don't need to worry about that. If you're only producing things for the internet in your own use, you aren't going to need to worry about the DPI. But again, you want a larger image, or or a larger file size for things. If you're going to send something off to be printed at someplace like Walmart or Walgreens, you are going to want a larger image, or you're not going to be able to get enlargements made. That's enough about the resolution. We're going to work with different files in each lesson, of course, and you're going to make copies of files to save them, just like we did in Illustrator. We're going to work on this first chapter, or second chapter, I should say. We are going to retouch a scan of this damaged and discolored vintage photograph. We want to make the final image size 7 by 7 inches. And we'll start by opening the file. You can start this file and open it, and then you can follow the instructions in the book. Delete the Adobe Photoshop settings file if you want, and then you can browse in Bridge. So if we go to File and Browse in Bridge, again, you must make sure you have Bridge downloaded and installed. You should have that on your computer. And it takes a minute for Bridge to come up. Bridge is a more involved file explorer than Windows Explorer is, and so it usually takes a little bit longer for a Bridge to come up. I really don't want to make this full screen. I want to keep this like this, desktop, and I need to go to my Photoshop lesson files. Took me a minute to find this. There's the Photoshop lesson file. Now, I want you to notice you have a slider that you can use to change the size of the icons that come up so that you can show more or fewer of them. You will get your panels. You browse to find where your lesson folder is. Opening your lesson folder in Bridge, you'll be able to see the images, and if you have the lesson folder selected, you can choose File, Add to Favorites, and it will come up in your Favorites folder, and you'll be able to pick that up very easily next time you want to go into it. Click the lesson folder to open it, go to Lesson 2, and you are going to be working with the O2 Start, and it should end up looking like that when you are done. If you need to look at your files larger, you just drag the slider at the bottom of Bridge. What we're working with is going to be the original scan, which is crooked. The colors are dull. The image has a green color cast. There's a crease going down. We're going to fix all of this. There's other things we're going to be working on as well. So double click to your start file to open it. I already have mine open. If you see the embedded profile mismatch dialog box, just say OK to it. You are going to be saving the file as a Photoshop, not as the TIFF. We are going to change this to Photoshop. You're going to call it O2 Working. And remember to include your initials in the file name and save. The first thing we're going to use is the crop tool to straighten, trim, and also scale the photograph. We can use either the crop tool or the crop command. The cropping deletes the cropped pixels. So off your Tools panel, you're going to select your Crop tool. crop handles should then appear on your image. Well, there it is. See these? For our dimensions, you want to make sure you have the width by height by resolution. And we are going to plug in 7 inches by 7 inches. And we want a resolution of 200 pixels per inch. You have choices by per inch or per centimeters. We're doing per pixels by inch. And you get your crop grid. First, we're going to do some straightening. And the first thing we want to do is select Straighten. Now the pointer is going to change to the Straighten tool. If you click at the top corner of the photo and drag a straight line across the edge, so you can click and simply drag. And following that top edge, it's going to rotate the image and make it square. Any line that defines either the vertical or horizontal axis of the image would also work. That just works the best for our purposes. Now we're going to drag the white border and scale the image. You can drag from the corner and scale in. You'll also discover whether you were right this way on your straightening. And actually that's looking fairly good. You can drag from the corners. You can also drag from the sides. And you can also move the image around by selecting the inside, just clicking and moving the image. We want to get rid of all the white areas. So you may end up with something that's where you lose a little tiny bit of the image, but it'll be okay for what we're doing. So it takes just a little bit of practice to move everything around to get this correct. Once you're satisfied, you can press enter or return and the image will be cropped. I have a little bit of white left outside of it. So I could go back in. I'm going to undo and I can redo the whole thing. I'm going to again pick Straighten, go across to straighten my image. I still have my 7 by 7 in there. And I can bring this down. I can straighten this up. And I can move my image up and down to bring it in. I want to lose as little of the image as I can. And that looks pretty good. And you can use your arrow keys up and down, side to side to help you to center your image. And then just hit enter when you've got everything complete. Now that our image is cropped and we can see this without anything else, it's straightened, ready to go. To look at the dimensions for the image, all we need to do is go to the bottom of the window, pick on the drop box and go to document dimensions, and you'll see that yes indeed the document is indeed 7 by 7 inches at 200 pixels per inch. You can also go to image size, and you'll see it is 7 by 7. The overall dimensions at 200 pixels, do the math, 7 inches, 200 pixels per inch, 1400 pixels by 1400 pixels.